by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Combs.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
Summertime is a fun time in Wyoming, and we bring in Janet Millick every week from Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Janet, it's the prime time to get out on the water and have a great opportunity of recreation here around the Casper area.
That's right. The 4th of July weekend is almost upon us. And I tell you, it has just been, in the 90s. It's fantastic. The water is warming up. The fishing is great. The boating is great. And what a fantastic time to be in Wyoming.
And you see weather reports from some of the northern parts of the state where they're still getting snow from time to time. And then obviously it warms up enough to melt it off pretty quickly. But here in Casper, I think we are in the dead of summer. And you mentioned hitting the 90s, and I wasn't sure that we were ever going to do it because we had such a mild winter and then a mild spring, and things were really looking good. And I thought, let's just keep this on. No heat this year.
I think we all dreamed a little bit about that, Drew, but here we are. We're out sweating. We're trying to get the lawns mowed, and things are in full swing right now.
So we know that boating and fishing are in full swing right now. We've seen it on Glendo, we've seen it on Alcova and Pathfinder and Boysen and all the reservoirs, and safety becomes a big concern this weekend because of the 4th of July. Everybody goes out and they may take a 4 to 5 day weekend because of the holiday.
Exactly. And it is a great time to take off and really enjoy the outdoors. And, while we at the Wyoming Game and Fish Department tend to push this watercraft safety around the 4th of July, it is something that people need to be thinking about all year round, right? This is really very important. And those of you who have ever sat on the side of a reservoir and just watched the boaters recognize how difficult it can be to maneuver a boat, to load a trailer, to back a trailer in, to stop a motorized vehicle, because clearly there are no brakes. And so, there are a lot of challenges out there. And so when you add the number of people that will be recreating this weekend, and you add some of those individuals who may be consuming some alcohol, it is so important to know about boating safety and what you need to know to be safe on that water.
Yeah, one of the first things we always talk about when it comes to the boats and being in the water is AIS, to make sure that you're checked, to make sure that you're ready to go. But you brought Ty in today, and Ty's going to throw it down and really give us all the information that we need, because some people, maybe this is the first time they've gone out since last 4th of July on the water.
Not saying that I am one of those people, but I do really hope to get my boat out. And yes, Ty is one of our reservoir crew game wardens that, oddly enough, people sometimes don't associate the Wyoming Game and Fish Department and how we regulate boating safety. But this is something that came to us, a job duty that came to us from the U.S. Coast Guard many, many, many years ago. And we do continue to take that job very seriously, because it is important to be safe on the water. And Ty can tell us all about some of those things that he has already seen this summer on the waters that people need to be aware of.
So, Ty, first off, we just wanted to get out there and be clear that your number one priority is not to be a fun hater and ruin everyone's fun for the 4th of July weekend.
That's right. A lot of people call us the fun police, and they think we're just out there policing their fun. But in all reality, we're just trying to make sure that everyone stays safe, that everyone comes home at the end of the day, and that everyone can have an enjoyable time out with their families. But most importantly, stay safe out there.
And that's one of the worrisome things for me is if someone goes out to, say, an Alcova, and you're out on Alcova for the first time and you rented a boat or a jet ski and you've never really gone on the water on a boat or jet ski before, there's a lot of things you need to know before, you hurt someone or yourself.
Yeah, that's right. One of the biggest things that we run into, especially with newer boaters or people out there on the reservoir, is life jackets. Life jackets are one of those things that you should be wearing all the time on your boat, even though it's not required. I would highly recommend anytime you're out on the water, make sure you have a life jacket on. One of the biggest violations that we've come across is people on paddle boards or kayaks that also do not have a life jacket on board their kayak or their paddle board. It's important to make sure, even if you're not going to wear it on that kayak or paddleboard, that at least you have it on the vessel with you, because otherwise that you are required to have it. It is a violation, and we want to ensure your safety out there.
Drew, one of the things that we often see in Wyoming, and it's something that people don't think about, is the temperature of the water, right? So there is something like when you fall into that water and it is so cold, your natural reaction is often to gasp, because that's just what your body naturally does. And oftentimes that's when you can suck in the water, right? If you're falling into the water, your natural reaction that happens when it is so cold is to inhale. And we all know what that does to the lungs, and to have water there. So it is oftentimes the life jacket is to help just those natural reactions that happen when we hit that super cold water. In addition to, you never know what can happen with storms arising. That is one of the big things that we have always seen. I can remember the horror stories of Pathfinder when I was a kid, right? People don't recognize that you can get into the middle of the lake on a paddleboard with no problems. You can have a great time, and then a storm arises and those winds kick up and you're, going against those white caps, and it just becomes a super dangerous situation. And so, just remembering that the life jacket can protect us against the elements in Wyoming is so important.
And another thing you mentioned there is that cold water. So you don't know what it's going to take for you to be in that water. I mean, you could be on a jet boat or a ski boat or whatever, and you could hit a wake, and that could throw you off. Like, it doesn't mean the boat has to flip over, but you could bounce and be thrown out. And having that life jacket on will definitely help save your life. And Ty, you were mentioning on a paddleboard or a kayak, it's, I would think, a lot tougher to just store it on there than it is to just have it on.
Yeah. A lot of paddle boards and kayaks have those little elastic bands you can, throw a life jacket on. But when push comes to shove and you need that life jacket, it's probably better to have it on rather than trying to fiddle around and get it on while you're in the water, in a potentially dangerous situation.
Or if you're on the river, Drew, oftentimes when you get separated from your kayak or paddleboard, or even your floaty for that matter, it's already in the current heading down the water. And so chances are good you are separated, and there goes your life jacket.
Right. And really, you get into that situation, and it just takes going around a corner and coming on some rapids or something, and that could really just ruin your day quickly. And Ty, what are some of the other key points that we want to make sure that people are aware of in a high boating time of the year?
Yeah. One of the things I kind of want to touch on a little bit is, personal watercraft. You are required to have a life jacket when you're on a personal watercraft, and those things are pretty fun. You can zip around on those pretty fast, and they're just a good time, but you do have to be careful.
Just so people know, a personal watercraft is a jet ski. We get a little technical here at Game and Fish, but
Gotcha.
It's a lot of fun to get on those wave runners, those, things that are now the size of a boat. Back when I was young, they were not. They were little tiny things. But yes, so sorry, continue on, Ty.
Yeah. So just make sure you have your life jacket on those, and just be careful. Like, they are a ton of fun, but you do want to exercise caution and make sure that you're operating those safely.
And it's not just the person driving, it's every person on that machine, because sometimes they're big enough you could get a couple of people on with you.
Exactly. Yep. You could have, 2 or sometimes up to 3 people on those. And it's just like a four-wheeler. If you have a four-wheeler with multiple people, the weight distribution is going to be different. It's going to turn different, handle different in the water. So those are things to be cautious of and aware of.
A lot of times what those jet skis do, of course, are jump the wakes, right? They'll follow other boats and maybe sometimes follow a little bit too closely. So you want to make sure that you are aware of all the boats that are always around you and how close you're getting to those, because sometimes those other watercraft aren't aware of you and aren't watching out for you. Sometimes the fun is to see, how high you can jump it, and then you lose your passenger. And there you are with someone in the water, not too far away from the rear end of another boat. And you just want to be extremely careful of all those situations, especially on the fourth, where there's hundreds and thousands of boats out there.
And obviously, you think about the motorcycles on the highways. That's kind of how it is, where they're smaller. They're not as easy to see as maybe a larger boat would be.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And again, remember that maneuverability. It's, stopping in water, man.
So
not easy.
When someone is on the first time, again, you can go places, you can rent these watercrafts. You don't have to have any experience to rent them. And for a little, I guess, a scenario, if you're coming up on a dock to, dismount, how much room do you need to give yourself to slow down and start, arcing that machine to, you don't want to crash into it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's important to give yourself plenty of room. I always like to go probably a little bit slower than most people, just kind of ease it on in there. If you go too fast, obviously you can damage not only your boat or your watercraft, but also the dock. You don't want to do that. So, slow is fast, in my opinion, when you're trying to dock something. Just kind of, take it slow and take your time and make sure you're doing it right.
Most docks, Drew, do have those wake-free zones, which are when you're supposed to shut your boat down and be going slower. So in theory, people should be creeping up on that pretty slow. And people do get in a rush, particularly if storms are moving in or if it's starting to get dark. So just keep that in mind, that patience is a virtue here.
Well, and that's another good point, is you need to be aware of what the buoys mean, where they're placed, why they're there, because that could not only be just a wake zone, but there could be rocks. It could be, just bad news.
Yeah, especially on Alcova, there's a lot of buoys that mark low-lying rocks in the water that could very easily damage your boat or your watercraft if you go over those and run into those. We've seen that in years past where people have crashed their boats into low-lying rocks and things that are marked by buoys, just not paying attention. And
by crashed their boat, Ty means launched them up far onto the shore, like enormous watercraft, right? Like huge motorboats that are 100 feet up the shore. So it's not something that, we just talk about for fun. It is a serious matter. And think of folks if they had been on the beach. Think of, you if you had been in front of that boat as it was getting ready to launch itself up onto that. So it is something that often happens, and people really need to be aware of their surroundings at all times.
Which we've mentioned Alcova a lot, but also there's other reservoirs where all these rules are the same. This isn't something that is specific for one body of water. Like every body of water needs to be treated the same.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're on Alcova or Pathfinder, Glendo, wherever. The rules are the same. The regulations are the same. And, the buoy markers are the same. So you just got to be paying attention. And kind of going along those lines, too, boats are inherently more dangerous than vehicles. There's no seat belts, safety items like that. So that's another reason that we go around and check for life jackets and check for throwable flotation devices and fire extinguishers, because those things are easily removed from boats. And we just want to make sure that everyone's in compliance with safety rules and regulations to keep them safe.
Let's throw another, issue into the mix here. And if you're boating while drinking, you could then even cause more of an issue. But it's not the same as if you're in a car. If you're in a car and your passenger's drinking a beer, that's not right. But in a boat, you can't be drinking, but your passengers all can be, and that could really cause issues.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, this weekend coming into the 4th of July, if you're operating a boat, out with your family or your friends or whoever you're with, just make sure that you have a sober driver on that boat. Boating accidents are almost always caused by alcohol. Not always, but almost always. Alcohol is a huge contributor to those boating accidents. So just make sure that you have a sober driver. Everyone else can be, drink and have a good time, but we really want to make sure that driver's sober, because not only could that wreak havoc on your weekend, but if you're caught boating under the influence of alcohol, then we will take enforcement action for that. So we don't want to ruin anybody's weekend by having to do that. So just make sure you're sober on the boat.
Yeah, and that ruins your judgment and your balance, and so really it just adds way more possibilities for bad things to happen. So don't drink and boat. You get a BUI.
That's right. And there's so many things that go into that, Drew, as well, that people just don't think about, as far as let's just say the boat operator has been consuming quite a bit of alcohol, and you have a fun group of kids who are jumping off the back of the boat, right? And they don't realize there's still a kid back there. They throw that engine into drive and the prop starts up and you have kids swimming out back. And, these are true stories that have happened in Wyoming. And, I'm pretty sure when Life Flight lands to haul your kid away because of a prop strike, it's not the best feeling in the world. So, it's not just about navigating the waters under the influence. It's about keeping your entire situation safe, your family, your kids, and others. Just the simplest things can happen, just like in, on a highway or anything else like that. There's not as much control sometimes in watercraft, but keep safe and just go enjoy the weekend, and then you won't have to worry so much about all those little things.
Yeah, again, not trying to be fun haters, but just trying to make sure that you live on to keep having fun.
Agreed. And, again, you only have to see it once. And like my husband and I do not allow any alcohol on the boat, just for the safety of the kids, because some of the stuff that we have seen has not been pretty, and just don't want to go there with our own family.
Very good. Well, of course, you can go to wgfd.wyo.gov if you would like to find out more information on boat safety. You can even find out about boater safety courses. If you're new to the boating world and you want to learn how to do it correctly, you can do it all right there at the Game and Fish website. Ty, Janet, thank you guys.
Thanks, Drew, and we'll see you guys on the water this weekend.
Thank you. Stay safe out there.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew, along with Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And Brian, we've done the show from Glendo multiple times. We've done it from your kitchen a couple of times, but we've never been to Boise.
Well, we're here now.
We are, and this is my first experience for a couple of different things. I've never been on the water here at Boise, and it's quite a different layout, really, than Glendo is.
Yeah, for one, you can't beat the beauty of it. We got the Wind Rivers, and you got South Pass in the back. We got mountain tops that are capped with snow, and you've got just a beautiful reservoir that's got all kinds of different terrain. I don't know, I think it's about 12 miles probably from the causeway up to the dam. So there's an awful lot of water to cover. There's lots of nooks and crannies and bays. And, we're out here watching anglers during the Stampede event. And there's guys everywhere, and there's guys catching fish just about everywhere we've gone. So, and
we're fishing a little different than we had before. Usually we have either a worm or a minnow or a leech on a jig, and now we're pulling crankbaits, and this is a whole different kind of fishing.
Well, and again, that's what we're doing, and there are a handful of guys out here pulling cranks and plugs or rapalas or whatever whatever you want to call it. But we also, we've stopped quite a few guys this morning that just been pulling worm harnesses. There was a couple guys jigging as well. But yeah, it's interesting to see the different presentations, and we've seen guys fishing as shallow as 3 and 4 foot, and we've got guys that are out here in 22 foot of water, doing really the same presentation.
That kind of seems like one of the differences too. And when people are coming into Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, to maybe they've never done the crankbait, pulling the cranks or anything like that, but the setups are totally different than a regular rod and reel that you would use.
Yeah, we're pulling cranks right now, and so we're using a telescoping rod. We're using a line counter so we can determine how far back our lures are running. We're also running planer boards. We're using offshores today. But those planer boards kind of help, create some separation between the lures themselves, but also allows you to get away from the boat. So especially when you're fishing that, 3, 4, 5 foot of water, a lot of times those fish, tend to get spooked away from the boat. So having the planer boards is handy. And again, it kind of just comes down to what you like doing, and if you like, this is a great day for a boat ride,
Yeah, right.
and, but pulling cranks is it takes some effort too. You're constantly reeling in, reeling out. Making sure the hooks are clear, free of weeds, and making sure everything's running true. And then you're just constantly changing out colors, looking for the best one that's going to work for the day.
And we had our line in the water for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and we didn't have anything, so we switched them all out, and we just have done that. So really, it's. When you're doing this, it's a little different than you're jig fishing, just for the fact that you got a whole system that's going on with these and all the different lures that you're using.
Well, and there's just a ton of different things to consider. We're on the south end of Boise right now, and it's pretty muddy. I don't think it's too muddy, but color options are going to be really important today. You got bright sunny day. I mean, literally there is not a cloud in the sky.
Right.
And so we got a little bit of a chop on the water. And so we got those factors, and then we're going to determine, how fast are we going to run. Right now we're running the boat at about 1.8, but we might have to slow that down. We might have to speed it up. We're going to help kind of determine that by doing some S curves, turning out here in the S formation, and we're going to watch and see, if the inside board's hitting or the outside board's hitting. If the inside board's hitting, then obviously they kind of want it a little bit slower, and if the outside board's constantly hit, then we're gonna turn up our speed and go a little bit faster. And
one of the other differences is we are running two different types of line too, where normally you just run your whatever you have on your rod.
Yeah, typically I like to run mono on these. There's a great trolling app called Precision Trolling. I think it's about $100 for a lifetime subscription to it. But that will determine, it'll show you basically how far you need to run. We've got a boat that needs to be weighed in, so we're going to have to take a quick break, I think.
All right. We'll be back from Boise in just minutes.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew and Brian back at Boise Reservoir at Boise State Park over near Shoshone and right at the Wind River Canyon. And I'll tell you, Brian, we did just do some weigh-ins. That's what we're out doing on the boat here and kind of fishing ourselves. But, been able to weigh these walleye. It's kind of nice to see a 21-inch, walleye,
Yeah, that boat came in with 4 fish, 19 to 21 inches, and really healthy, good-looking fish.
It's fun to see, the difference in, the Glendo and Boise, and even looking at the fish, the colors look a little bit different. The size and even the shape of the fish here look a little different.
Yeah, we kind of been struggling a little bit down at Glendo with just probably quality, healthy fish in terms, we'll see some good, length, 22, 23-inch fish, but, they haven't been real fat this year down there, and it's kind of deceiving. You look at a fish, you're like, oh boy, that's actually 21 inches, but it just didn't have the girth. But these fish up here right now look like they're plenty healthy.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that, in Wyoming, we take fishing very seriously, and Game and Fish, they work really hard at making sure that the lakes and reservoirs and everything are stocked up and giving us that option. And if someone is going to come in and maybe want to pull some cranks, Brian, and they come into the store, what kind of a setup do they need to have? I mean, obviously the poles are different, the reels are different, all the way down to the baits are different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a good quality line counter, and spend what you want to spend. I mean, we have reels anywhere from, let's say $60 all the way to $300. Obviously, a $300 reel is probably going to be a little bit better quality.
Now,
better.
will it catch the fish for you? Because that'd be nice.
No, it does not catch the fish for you. You still have to put in the work. Like the angler we were just kind of talking to. He's like, I'm putting in the work. I spent multiple days out here pre-fishing, looking at structure and looking at maps, and it does take some effort, right? So just because you throw some crankbaits out behind a boat doesn't mean you're going to catch fish,
right? And this is the first time I've seen it done, but I've never actually been a participant of this, and it's a whole different way of fishing. And I would ask my dad if he ever has done this, and back home they don't do this a whole lot unless you're walleye fishing up on the big lakes.
Sure, yeah, and again, I always tell people, fish how you like to fish. I mean, if you just like catching fish on a jig, you're going to be able to do it here.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a part of this lake that's going to hold some structure that the fish are going to be, able to be caught on a jig. But if you're the guy that likes to pull bottom bouncers, and a lot of people do, I think there's a fish on that one, Noah, on this inside one here.
The inside fish. Hey, we're going to do play-by-play of Noah. Did you get it? All right, we do. We have a fish coming in.
Is there? Yeah, yep. I see something on the back there. Let me get this planer board off.
Yeah. So with the planer boards, basically it's like a floating male flag, really.
You've got mail.
You've got mail, and Noah got a little fish here on the rod. Little is exactly what I'm saying. I mean, that's a little guy right there, Noah.
Yeah, he's probably 12 inches. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, we didn't get skunked today on the boat, which is kind of fun, to see, and it's really interesting also with the way that you have to go about changing out the fish and getting her all set and ready to go, and the whole process is really kind of different, and there's like a multi-step process to this type of fishing, because you have to take off the planer board, you have to reel it in, and
you got to control the boat. You got to, there's a lot of things going on. It's nice to have a couple of different guys in the boat that can assist, right?
So we have 4 poles out right now, and the way the system is, if you have problems with one of the planer boards, if you're going to fish coming on the outside, you have to reel the inside in and put it out at a different location, and it just kind of gets a little confusing and a little more work to it, which really, even though it's a little bit lazy man fishing while you're just waiting, there's a lot more work that goes into it after you hook one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great way to cover water, and you've got your fish finders on, so you're looking at structure, you're looking at fish, you're looking at how the fish are holding to the structure, whether they're suspended fish or whether they're hugging the bottom. So that all plays a part on how you're going to run these baits. Whether you're running snap weights to get them down a little deeper, whether you're in shallower water, deeper water. Maybe use some side imaging. There's a lot that can go into it.
When you and I were at Glendo not long ago, we were doing some fishing where we were using bobbers. And out here, are you going to use a bobber like you would there?
I mean, you obviously could. I haven't put as much time into this lake just because of proximity to Casper.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely some areas. I mean, a bobber. The beauty of a bobber is we're fishing 12 to 15 foot of water, and you could certainly sit on a spot out here. Maybe you've got a submerged hump out here. You could set a bobber 15 foot down and just sit there with a jig or with a leech and a bobber, and then while you're casting around it. So it's a great way to run your second rod, an effective second rod. So it can be done, and probably different structures. We're fishing a shoreline, and we're kind of moving up and down the shoreline looking for fish. So once we find a pod, or maybe we catch a fish in the same location multiple times, might be an opportunity to stop and actually work that area a little bit more effectively with a jig.
So obviously there's lots of options when you're out on the water in Wyoming, whether it's at Glendo, whether it's at Boise, whether it's at Pathfinder or Alcova, and we always enjoy learning things, and this is every time I get to come out, that it's a new learning experience. And again, when I was a kid, it was bass fishing, crappie fishing, and cat fishing. And then walleye fishing is a whole new thing to me. So just to see the different ways the guys do it. And one of the cool parts about being in the tournament and seeing all these different people is seeing all the different methods and thought processes.
Oh yeah, I mean we were talking about we didn't bring any live bait with us today, so maybe eventually we'll throw some bottom bouncers down and drag like a Berkeley worm, just an artificial worm, and see if we can get a bite on that. But yeah, there's so many different ways to fish, and we could sit here and get on a windy shoreline and just drift,
Right.
use the Minn Kota to kind of keep us within the contour that we're looking for. And yeah, it's just, that's what I love about this walleye fishing is that there's so many different presentations that you can use that are effective.
Right. So Chuck is one of the anglers we were just chatting with, and said he went into Rocky Mountain Discount Sports and made sure that he had enough lures, and said he cleaned out a whole section. Once he found the color that was working for him, he's like, I don't want to not have this color.
Yeah, it sounds like they found a color on Wednesday pre-fishing that was very effective, and said they went into the store and cleaned out the whole row of pegs of that particular color. So,
which that's another theory and method is the color schemes, and you go through your tackle and you have greens and whites and blues and oranges and yellows, and really you go through here and you could sit all day and go through the boxes and you see all kinds of different colors, and that's kind of how your shelves are at the store. You've got something for every type of weather, whether it's clear skies or cloudy or whatever.
Yeah, and every different lure shakes and rattles and rolls a little differently, so you got to make sure you've got a lure that can cover different depths, and you just never know what you're gonna be up against when you get out here.
No, I think it's got another fish. So, all right, we're gonna take another break and be back again from Boysen here in just minutes.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew back at Boysen Reservoir, where the Wyoming Walleye Stampede. It's week 3. It's the third week of the 4-week series of the tournament. And Noah Davis has been part of the Walleye Stampede for the last couple of years. And Noah, not only do you help measure fish and register what the fish are, but you love just learning from all the different anglers out here. And you learn quite a little bit too, don't you?
Yeah, I learned a lot from all these anglers. It's really cool to go up to the boat and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And then they have like a 26 century in the boat and they're like, we're using slip bobbers. And then I can learn them from that.
It's interesting how they'll share their ideas with the 14-year-old, but an older guy's like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, sorry, I don't know. Can't help you, fella.
Where'd you catch him? In the mouth?
So you had some pretty good luck not long ago at Glendo, and will you ever be able to top that?
Last weekend, me, my dad, and my little sister were down at Glendo, and we had some bobbers out, and the bobber went down. I set the hook, and I handed it to my little sister because I just thought it was like a regular fish. She reels it in. She's like, no, I can't reel it in anymore. So she hands it back to me. I'm like, oh, she wasn't kidding. It's got some shoulders on her. We get up to the boat, and I'm like, that's a big fish, and it was a 31.5. And like you said, I've been working these tournaments for a couple years, and I've not seen a fish that big at the tournaments. So it was a really cool experience.
Were you pretty excited, I suppose?
Yeah, even like I called Brian Woodward right after that, and I was like, I just got a 31-incher.
How are you going to be able to top it? 31 inches is hard to beat anywhere.
Yeah, just fish it. That just gives me an excuse to fish as much as possible.
Yeah, how many times have you fished this summer? Because you and your dad go out a lot too, don't you?
Quite a bit. Too many times to count. Well, not too many times to count, but don't want to count them up right now. So.
Right. So, and starting out young, you really got into fishing a long time ago, because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago where you would ride your bike to Yesness Pond, or anytime your dad would take you out, you guys would go, or if you would go out with Brian. So you've been fishing for quite a long time. So it's one of those, if you start young, it's going to go on, and your whole family does this because your cousin also is an angler.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to start young, because when I'm your guys' age, maybe I'll have topped it by then. So
maybe so, or maybe you just enjoy it still after all those years. But all right, Noah, how you think the tournament's been going this year?
It's these tournaments have been going pretty good this year. We've seen some big weights at Glendo, and we've seen some big fish come out of Boysen here today. So it's going to be exciting to see what weight wins it tomorrow.
Well, we appreciate you being on. And one of the other guys that is a part of this is Tony Kaiser from Cedar Ridge Outfitters. And Tony, come on over and take the mic here and push Noah right on out of the way. But so you help Brian out and with the weigh boats, and that's a pretty exciting thing because you get to see and put your hands on all those big fish.
We do it. It plays a very important part of this for the teams, just trying to keep the motivation up and helping Brian and Mitch out. I mean, they've got enough on their plates that it kind of makes it nice that they know they've got somebody out here in a boat that can help them out, solve problems, keep everybody going.
And, you get to see a lot of the big ones. As a matter of fact, you weighed a lot of the bigger ones in today. Have you seen any kind of tips or ideas that people have been doing that has been different?
They've been pulling cranks. They've been pulling worm harnesses. They've been jigging. They've been throwing plastics. They had leeches. There was a couple of guys that were throwing bobbers today. The guys that were pitching the jigs first thing this morning definitely got it figured out. We saw some big fish come in pretty quick and pretty early this morning.
How do you come over to Boysen very often? I mean, I know that you fish all over the place, but
no, Boysen just isn't a lake that I would say is my favorite lake to fish. Glendo's definitely my favorite. Being on the Master and the NWT, fishing with Brian and Rick Walters and all them waters are definitely the funner one. But Boysen has some big lake. It's got a heck of a habitat for the walleye. The walleye are definitely starting to take over, so the trout are definitely getting out of here, which is nice to see. Us guys that are running the walleye stuff, we don't want to see the trout, so they've definitely worked hard. They've got the lake coming around, and it's definitely turning into probably be up here more often now. And
being on the tours like you have been in all the tournaments and everything, what do you see different in Wyoming that maybe you wouldn't see in South Dakota, or maybe it's a little different over there?
The tournament stuff, there's not a lot of pulling worm harnesses. A lot of it's jigging wraps. They don't throw jigs a lot. They do throw the plastics, but it's a lot of jigging wraps. It's a lot of pulling cranks for the big boys playing in that era.
So it really is kind of interesting how state to state and waters to waters things are different, because just last week you were at Glendo and fishing totally different than you are here.
Last week was all bobbers, and it was amazing. I mean, it didn't matter who we took out. We threw bobbers, and it was very good bite on the bobbers.
One of the cool parts about here is not only is it cool to kind of get out and see fresh waters and new waters, is the way it's kept up. I mean, it's some of the best docks I've seen over here.
Boysen has some really good docks. Glendo's there, but you get to these other lakes where we're getting ready to go do championship at another lake. You don't see the upkeep on the lake, and it's got a heck of a fishery there with the walleye, the trout. It's a good lake too, but they just don't put the work into it that I would like to see them do.
Well, and we all love coming out here. We love being part of this tournament and just fishing in general. You and I have gone out quite a few times, and it really is a great way to be one with nature and bring out the little ones. Aubrey is here, and
Aubrey's here. She's not caught any walleye till she started fishing with Uncle Tony, so she knows how to do it now.
Aubrey,
Noah, we've taught him a lot about the bobbers. He just doesn't realize that we were down below and hooked that 31 on there for him.
Yeah, you got a little help. No, you didn't even know it. But Aubrey, how do you like fishing and being part of all this action that goes on here?
I'm just thankful that I get to come and meet new people, and I'm thankful for Uncle Tony teaching me how to fish walleye, and I am just grateful that I get to explore and find out new ways how to fish, and now I know how to fish walleye because of Uncle Tony, and he helps me all the time.
Yeah. Oh, and Noah, yeah, you can't. Noah.
You have Noah.
Right.
Noah helps all the time, too. And so do you.
Well, I try, but thank you anyway. But all right, guys, that's going to do it from Boysen. We appreciate you listening this week, and next week we'll be back, and all kinds of fun stuff happening here on Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.